Hi, welcome to Don's Machine Shop. We're going to try to describe a little bit of dry shafts, how to measure them. This first video will be where we kind of describe so you can tell what kind of U-joints your car has. If you're building a custom street rod or a hot rod, the first thing a dry shaft shop needs to know is what U-joints that you have. You may have a combination where you have parts from a General Motors, but you might have a Ford 9-inch rear end. So the U-joints on both ends might be different. And in order to measure dry shaft, that dry shaft builder will have to know that. We've been building dry shafts since the early 60s, so we've been doing this a long time. So these are questions we get posed with every day. So let's get started and see if we can help you out. So it helps to have a nice dial caliper. So the first thing you got to be able to do is you got to be able to measure your cups to determine what size U-joint you have. These top three are General Motors based U-joints. This is used in a Ford once in a while, but these are your three basic U-joints. 1310 is kind of your first one. A lot of General Motors cars have that in the early 70s and stuff. Very common U-joint. So the first thing we're going to talk about is we need to determine your cup diameter. So the first thing we do right there is we'll take our dial caliper, measure our cup diameter, and there we go. We're 1 1/16 inch cup diameter. The next step is our spread should be 3.219. In order to measure this accurately, you have to press in the cups a little bit. So let's see what we get here. Yeah, so we're about 3.230. If I press in the cups a little bit, it'll go into the 3.219. So this is our spread. So when we talk about a spread of a U-joint, it'll be from end of cup to end of cup. And as we talk about this, it will be possible, we'll get into this in a few minutes, where the spread is different on the opposite side than the other. So, okay, so now that we've gone through the 1310 U-joint, the next step is we have a 1330 U-joint. And the only difference in that will be the diameter of the cup increases to 1 1/8. So as we do that, we'll measure this cup, and we'll have 1 inch 125, 1 1/8. So with the 1330 U-joint, our cup diameter will increase in size. Okay. So as we move ahead, we have our standard 1350 U-joint, which in general, 1350 is most common in a higher horsepower race car application. And you'll have a couple of choices here on the 1350. It'll be 1 3/16 inch cup diameter, and the spread now goes up to 3 5/8, which is a larger spread. So it's a much larger U-joint than your 1310 version. As we do that, we have two different U-joints available. We'll touch on this briefly. Almost all U-joints are available in two different ways. One will have a grease fitting in it. Okay, I'll grab that. Okay, it'll have a grease fitting in the center of the U-joint, which means this U-joint is hollow on the inside. Then we'll have what we call a solid version of the U-joints, where they're fully solid, much stronger U-joint. You can see where if they were hollow in here, it's a weaker application. So this would be your common race car U-joint used in drag racing, road racing, and such. So, okay, so the next U-joint we have in line is we'll have the three that are real popular. Then we have what you call a 3R, which is an inside clip U-joint with an 1 1/8 cup diameter. The difference on that U-joint, this U-joint was used in the 70s, Oldsmobile, Pontiac, 442s had a lot of it, and some Chevrolets too on the rear end. So the big difference on this U-joint is the fact that it has an inside clip, where all the other U-joints, the other three, have a form of a clip that secures on the outside. This will have clips that go on the inside, and we'll demonstrate the difference. You can notice on the pinion yoke that there's no ears to hold this U-joint in place from going left to right. So if you set your U-joint in there, the U-joint will be able to move side to side. The clips are installed into the grooves, and now this U-joint is protected and can't go left to right. That's where it got the name inside clip. Just for curiosity, we'll show you, here's a pinion yoke that has the ears on the side, and that holds this U-joint from going left to right, so it's able to not move. Okay, so that's this type of pinion yoke will be used for the top 3 U-joints, and then the 3R would use the ones without the ears. So common General Motors U-joint. Okay. All right, so then it comes, and that covers most of your General Motors and a little bit of Ford. The next two, Dodge has basically 2 U-joints. And it's commonly called, you may have heard, small Chrysler, large Chrysler. So basically the cup diameter on the small Chrysler is 1 inch 078, which is really an odd number. And then you have the 7290 Dodge, which is 1 1/8 cup. Now it is very common. Okay, so on the Dodge, the 7290 is oftentimes confused with the 3R inside clip because they both have 1 1/8 cup, and the spread is different on a Chrysler than a General Motors. So people will misplace this U-joint and then install the wrong U-joint at times. So odds are if you have a front loader Chrysler differential, it's going to take a Chrysler U-joint unless somebody has switched to pinion yoke. So this is a popular mistake that's made. You can see that the Chrysler also is a form of an inside clip. So it has the clip grooves on the cups, so you have to make sure that them clips are in there. We see that too. People will forget to put them clips in there, and then it will launch a U-joint out of there, and that ain't no good. So, all right. Okay, so that covers the 2 Dodge U-joints. Then we get into a couple oddballs, a 1310 special and a 1330 special. And these U-joints are a little bit different. A 1310 special will have 1 inch and 1/16 cup, but it'll have a different spread. It'll have a larger spread. A 1330 special will have 2 different cups on it, 1 inch and 1/16 and 1 inch and 1/8, and a 3 5/8 spread. The splicer part number for that is a 5212X. Okay, and that's a common, real common Ford application U-joint. Okay, and as you can see, I have one of them here, so I'll just kind of demonstrate the difference. Commonly called a conversion U-joint. So we'll have a cup diameter of 1 1/8, and then on the other side we'll have a cup diameter of 1 1/16. Okay, and that's commonly a Ford run U-joint right there. Okay, so hopefully that helped you. That's the common, there's no trucks involved here, but this is your common car U-joints that we will see. So the next step is if you're building a hot rod and you have 2 different components, we want to talk about the conversion U-joints. So you go into normal parts stores and you'll ask them for, I need a U-joint that has this to this. A lot of times they're not going to know what you're talking about. You probably got to get to a Driveshaft shop for them to understand what you're looking for. There's many conversion U-joints to adapt your Driveshaft so you don't have to change the end on your Driveshaft. You can install a U-joint that'll go to a different pinion yoke. So our first one will be 1310, 1330. It has 1 inch and 1/16 cup on both directions, but the spread is different. So the spread between the cups is 3.220, and the other side is 3.625. That is a 5-134X. Pretty common used U-joint there. A lot of times a customer will go to the junkyard, grab a Driveshaft. It wasn't for the proper car, but he wants to make it work for his project, and that's how we'd get it there. The next one is a 1310 by 1330. BC stands for big cup. So what that means then is we have 1 inch and 1/16 cup on one side, and the BC for big cup would be the 1 1/8 cup on the other side. And that NEAPCO part number is a 1-5349. Okay, so the next one is 1330 by a 1330 big cup. The spread stays the same, so it's 3 5/8 spread. So like this one has 2 different spreads. This is we call it a square U-joint, 3.625, but it has 2 different cup sizes. 1 inch and 1/16 on one side, 1 1/8 reference the big cup. That's a 5-1204X. This U-joint was actually used in some Ford trucks later on in the late 70s, early 80s also. Okay, so then here's a common one, a 1330 to a 1350. The spread is square, 3.625, but it has the smallest cup available, 1 inch and 1/16, to 1 inch and 3/16. So that takes your 1310 U-joint and converts it all the way up to the 1350. So this is common where somebody is building a race car. They have a drive shaft, and the pinion yoke is 1310, and they want to build a race car drive shaft the first time around and then change the rear end at a later date. So we can put this conversion U-joint in there and make it work for them for the time being so they can drive the car around or test things, but eventually change it to a 1350 without having to build a new drive shaft. Okay, so next one along the line is a 1330 big cup by a 1350. It'll be a square U-joint again, 3.625, but it has an 1.1/8 cup and an 1 3/16 cup. So as you can see by these conversions, we're kind of covering all the differences. More than likely, if you have a project that you're building a drive shaft for, we can come up with a U-joint for it. So that part number is in NAPCO 2-4953. Okay, the last one is this 3R, which is kind of a thorn to a lot of people because so many older muscle cars had that inside clip 3R U-joint that we talked about. So when you have that 3R inside clip U-joint, you got to change the rear end out, the differential out, reset it up, buy a new pinion yoke in order for you to get that drive shaft to work. But what we want to do is, not everybody wants to do that for just a street car or a hot rod. The easiest way out is for us to get a conversion joint that goes from 3R to 1330. So that's going to have, on one side, it's going to have the 1.1/8 3R, which is the inside clip. So the center two cups will have the clip grooves. So the center two cups will have clip grooves on them, and the other side will not. So the other side, the 1.1/8 cup, will have an 1 1/16 on the other side. So that gets us from our 3R to 1330, and that'll solve a lot of problems for somebody building a hot rod. Okay. All right, so next step we're going to talk about a little bit here is we're going to talk about slip yokes. In the second video, we'll address what parts are stronger, what works for your horsepower, what works better for a drag car application, and then what'll work, drag car, road race, whatever your application tends to be. We'll cover that in the second video. So now, when it comes to slip yokes, for General Motors, basically you have a couple different slip yokes you could choose from. Most of your Turbo 350, Power Glide, Muncie, 200 R4 and 700 R4 all will take the same slip yoke. There's some Power Glides, the older ones, that have a different spline count, but we'll stay kind of general here. So that slip yoke, this is an aftermarket slip yoke, so you have both this style slip yoke, and let me grab the stock one. Here's a stock version of the same slip yoke. These are identical. One is a billet one made by Sonex, and this would be your stock one that you have. You can see how the stronger one has been upgraded to the larger U-joint cup, and the stock one has the small U-joint cup. This is a much stronger piece and always used in a race application or even a hot rod that has lots of horsepower. So we'll use this for a demonstration. So this slip yoke will cover the Turbo 350, all these listed here. There's some 4L60s and stuff like that where this slip yoke will work too, but we've noticed that it works on a couple different applications and not on others. So your Turbo 400 slip yoke is kind of all by itself. That slip yoke is of a shorter version, much beefier, larger diameter, and as you've all heard, a Turbo 400 is a pretty strong transmission, and you can tell by the beefiness in the slip yoke even. This will also take a 1350 U-joint. It has the largest U-joint, the stronger one. Okay, so then the Mopar, the 727 transmission takes all the same slip yoke also. This is a Mopar made by Sonex. This will take, they actually convert this over to take the 1350 U-joint instead of the original Mopar U-joints. So this has been converted. So here's a clear case where you would need a conversion U-joint. If you were putting this slip yoke on your drive shaft, it's going to take the 1350 U-joint that we talked about. So it's going to take the strong drag race application, General Motors based U-joint on the front. Let's just say you had a drive shaft, but you didn't change the rear end yet. That is still your Dodge. Let's just say it's a 7260 or a 7290 Dodge. We can build that drive shaft to take the 1350 U-joint, and then we're going to get you a conversion U-joint to go down to your 7260 or your 7290. And that's part of that conversion list where we'll have some choices. And then at a later date, if you change the rear end around and make that a 1350, then we can just make a U-joint change and check length, and everything should be good for you. So, okay, all right. So I think that pretty much covers a lot of the different U-joints, what you need to know and measure. One last item, a lot of Fords, the Mustangs and stuff, they will take a flange. So really no difference here. You still have the U-joint cup diameter. You still have the overall spread that you need to know. And this takes an outside clip, as you can see, the clip grooves that are built in this flange yoke. So all this information, if you're going to measure a drive shaft and you need to go to a shop and they're going to build you a drive shaft and you don't have all the parts, these are the questions they're going to ask you. They're going to need to know what U-joints they are. It'll be helpful if you have a U-joint out of it that, you know, fit into the rear end, fit into the pinion yoke, or if you got a U-joint that fits into the slip yoke. That will help you if you can bring it to the shop. Otherwise, if you don't, this is a good way to go after it and measure to determine what you need. So that should do it. Hopefully this will help you out a little bit. They said Don's Machine Shop, located in Kenosha, Wisconsin. If we can help you, sure would love to. Thank you.